Today I'm going to be speaking about Toto Riina and the fact that he felt he could order American Cosa Nostra to kill anyone he felt should be killed. Although he was very short in height, he had the ego of a giant. Let's get into it. During the 80s, after the Giuliani succeeded in decimating the Palermo bosses and took over the Sicilian Mafia, including its commission, Toto Riina had a new agenda. By the year 1985, Italian prosecuting judge Giovanni Falcone began deep diving into drug trafficking in the Sicilian Mafia. And with the Palermo bosses decimated, the drug trafficking now solely belonged to the Giuliani. That same year, Giovanni Falcone traveled to New York to meet with Rudolph Giuliani, who at the time was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District. And on that visit, Giuliani let Falcone interrogate a drug courier who began cooperating. The courier told Falcone where the heroin refineries were located in Sicily. Most were hidden in coves near the coastal cities in Trapani and Sciacca. As I've mentioned in a previous video, Rosario Naimo had been sent to watch over the Inzerillos and anyone who fled Sicily to escape being killed by the Giuliani, and Naimo's job was to keep an eye on them. He was extremely powerful, but more importantly, loved and respected by Toto Riina. In that same year, 1985, Naimo received a visitor from Sicily. On that particular day, he was at Cafe Giardino, a Brooklyn cafe that belonged to the Cherry Hill Gambinos. The cafe was a regular meeting place for the Sicilian faction of the Gambino family. Naimo's visitor was Benedetto Villico, a member of the Sicilian Mafia who happened to be married to an Inzerillo. Villico came with a message, one that was actually meant for the Gambino family in New York. The message was from Toto Riina, saying that the District Attorney of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, must be killed as soon as possible. To clarify, as I mentioned, Giuliani was a U.S. attorney, but in the message, the words District Attorney was used. According to Naimo, Villico gave him the message in the cafe, and either Joe or John Gambino said "State zit," to be quiet, because they were leery of listening devices. With a message like that, the entire government would have came down on them. They all left the cafe and took a walk to the corner. Naimo, Villico, and Joe and John Gambino. Rosario Gambino was doing 45 years in prison at the time. Naimo said the Gambino brothers were just as shocked by the message, but in front of Villico, told him that they were available for him. Villico reiterated that Riina wanted it done as soon as possible. The Gambino brothers again expressed their availability, but told Villico that they had to take things slowly. Living in America, they adapted to the American mentality, much different than the Sicilian mentality. Naimo would later admit he wished the Gambino brothers would have said things like, "This didn't happen in America. It wasn't the American mentality, attacking the police, law enforcement, or a prosecutor." He would further state, because the bosses in America instructed soldiers never to touch people like this or the FBI. When the Gambino brothers were alone with Naimo, they told him they were not happy with the situation. Naimo spoke to Villico privately and told him he was in disagreement with the message concerning Giuliani. Let me just say, a lot of the media who covered this story described Villico as a mafia hitman. Villico was a member, a capable one, as all members should be. To put it more bluntly, the term hitman should apply to any member, because if they're not capable, then they should have joined the choir. Villico told Naimo that they now all had a pact to get this done. And Naimo replied by telling him that all of America would turn on them and they'd have to flee. Naimo would say that although there was a Sicilian commission to decide on matters of such importance as this, Riina, at the time, was in total command and made all decisions, and the commission was basically for appearances. In essence, he was implying that although the commission represented the mafia's ultimate power, it didn't matter, because Riina had the final word, which if you study the history, what he said all rings true. A subsequent meeting took place in Sicily, where Naimo traveled to personally speak with Riina. But prior to that meeting, Riina sent another message to America, inquiring why it was taking so long, and offered respectfully to send a few people from Sicily to help get it done. Naimo felt he had the kind of relationship with Riina to speak his mind. It's important to remember, there were not many people who could disagree with him and walk away with their life. Riina told them they want murder, which surprised Naimo, because as far as he knew, no one was above him. Riina explained it had to be done, or all the sacrifices they had made would all be for nothing. He felt that Falcone believed he had an excellent investigative partner in Giuliani, and by killing Giuliani, they would isolate Falcone. In his mind, Falcone felt he had support with Giuliani, and they needed to take away that support. Riina wanted to continue his war on the state of Italy, which he ultimately did. Eventually, someone other than Naimo talked sense into Riina that killing an American prosecutor would cause U.S. law enforcement to destroy Sicilian Cosa Nostra. And supposedly, that someone was Bernardo Provenzano, a more logical and practical thinker. Riina lost interest in America until later that year, on December 16, 1985, when Paul Castellano was assassinated outside Sparks Steakhouse. Back then in Sicily, a boss being killed was a common occurrence, but news of the Gambino boss being killed was different for Riina. Supposedly, after learning the news, he was furious, and again sent another message to America. This time, it was John Gotti that he wanted killed. He felt that when Naimo went to America, Castellano, the Gambino family boss, welcomed him. The Sicilian Gambinos and Inzerillos were answering to Naimo, who was representing Riina, and Castellano respected that. And Riina felt he had to return that respect and avenge Castellano's death. And he was adamant about doing just that, which caused Naimo to make another trip to Sicily. And this time, he had Paolo Lo Duca, a Lucchese member, accompany him. They both explained that Castellano's death was an American Cosa Nostra problem and that the Americans would deal with it. Obviously, he listened to their reasoning and left it alone. Naimo mentioned that during the close relationship he had with Riina, they only had one disagreement, and that was over killing Giuliani. But as far as the Castellano situation, they were able to convince him without much pushback. Toto Riina, although he respected American Cosa Nostra, like his wanting to avenge the death of Castellano, he also felt that they were beneath him. And in an upcoming video, I'll speak about something that's never been talked about before and give an example of that. It has to do with Riina wanting to kill yet another member of American Cosa Nostra. That person was eventually killed, but it took a few people to try and explain to Riina that they needed to speak to the boss of the member's family first. His response was both funny and typical, and I'll save it for the video. Overall, had it not been for Naimo's reasonable mind, coupled with the respect that Riina had for him, Giuliani would have never been the mayor of New York City and a political lawyer, and John Gotti's reign as the boss of the Gambino family would have been a lot shorter than it was.